My name is Carrie Lagasse, 27 years old. Growing up, I always felt like I was playing a role in a story that had already been written long before I arrived. In our family, my older sister occupied the sunlit center of every scene, and I existed somewhere along the edges. She's 29 now, still radiant in everyone's eyes, still somehow the one who can do no wrong. For years, I tried to convince myself that maybe I was being dramatic or overly sensitive, that maybe the imbalance was all in my head. But you can only ignore a truth for so long before it plants itself in front of you and asks, how much more can you deny? Little memories small enough to drown in eventually rose to the surface and demanded attention. I remember birthdays where my sister's gifts were extravagant and thoughtful, and mine looked like afterthoughts wrapped in leftover paper. I remember school nights when she came home past curfew laughing, and my parents waved it off as kids being kids, while I once got grounded for coming home 10 minutes late because I missed the bus. And I remember holidays when she'd barely lift a finger, yet somehow receive the praise meant for me. Those little moments gathered weight over time, piling up, until it became impossible to pretend they weren't real. It's strange how unfairness shapes you slowly like a quiet erosion. I learned early on that my feelings didn't carry the same gravity as hers. If she was upset, the whole house shifted to accommodate. If I was hurt, I was told to not make a big deal out of nothing. Still, I held on to hope longer than I should have. I kept thinking that if I worked harder, pleased them more, or forced myself into the mold they loved so much they would finally see me. But love and recognition, I eventually learned, cannot be earned through exhaustion. By the time I turned 18, something inside me snapped, not loudly, but decisively. I needed air. I needed distance from the constant comparisons and the quiet ache of never being enough. So I moved out. I remember standing in my tiny new apartment, bare walls, secondhand furniture, and feeling more peace than I ever had in my childhood bedroom. But leaving didn't magically undo the damage. In fact, the real blow came from my sister shortly after I left. I didn't know envy lived in her until she showed it in its most destructive form. Out of nowhere, she told our parents I was involved in drugs and heavy drinking. A full fabrication. And the worst part, they believed her without hesitation. No questions. No attempt to hear my side. I offered to take a drug test right there and then to prove that everything she'd said was a lie. They brushed me off. To them, her word was gospel. Mine was noise. That betrayal settled deep in my bones. It wasn't just my sister's lie, it was my parents' willingness to accept the most damning version of me without blinking. That was the moment I realized nothing I said could compete with the pedestal they had placed her on. So I went no contact. Completely. 2 years of silence between us. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't done out of spite. It was survival. For the first time, I built my life without looking over my shoulder, without waiting for approval that never came. I poured myself into my career. I cultivated friendships that felt like family. And I built a life with the man I loved, a man who actually saw me, even in my quietest moments. But family ties, even fractured ones, have a way of tugging at you. One day I got a call from a relative saying my father had been hospitalized. And despite everything, the old instinct kicked in. You don't abandon someone just because they've abandoned you. That's what I told myself as I walked into the hospital room, heart heavy but steady. My father looked small in that bed, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes, not of death, but of losing me completely. We started talking again, slowly, cautiously, patching the fragile threads connecting us. It felt surreal, messy, complicated. My sister wasn't pleased. She always needed to be the center of our parents' orbit, and my return disrupted that. She became distant at first, then cold, then openly irritated that I was back in the picture. During that time, my parents admitted they were struggling financially. I know some people would say I was naive, but helping them felt like the right thing to do. Maybe part of me wanted to prove that I wasn't the selfish daughter my sister had painted me to be. Maybe another part of me still craved their acknowledgement, even if it was tied to something as ugly as their dependence on me. For a while, the dynamic shifted in ways I didn't expect. When my sister tried stirring up drama, my parents actually sided with me. Hearing them say, "Your sister wasn't there for us, but you were," was something I had never experienced. It was bittersweet. Validation that came too late, tied to sacrifice rather than love. Even then, I could feel something fragile beneath the surface, a dependence that felt more strategic than affectionate. A simmering jealousy from my sister, a relief from my parents that bordered on desperation. But I pushed those observations aside, telling myself I was imagining it. Amid all the chaos, there was one bright, unwavering thing in my life: my relationship with my boyfriend. After years together, he proposed. I said yes with tears in my eyes and hope in my chest. It felt like everything was coming together: my career, my love life, even the slow repair of family ties. When we announced the wedding, my sister's reaction was peculiar. Instead of joy, there was a tight smile and a flicker of something sharp, something she tried to hide beneath a casual, "Oh, you're getting married already." As though marriage was a race, she suddenly realized she was losing. But I brushed it off. We set the date for a weekend so everyone, including my parents and my sister, could attend easily. Despite everything, having them there mattered to me. Maybe too much. If I'd listened closely to my instincts, I might have sensed the storm gathering. My sister's clipped tone, my mother's strange hesitations, the way my father avoided conversations about the wedding as though he knew something he wasn't saying. But love makes you hope for things even when the warning signs are right in front of you. So I carried that hope into my wedding plans, unaware that a single choice made by my parents would soon shatter any illusion of reconciliation I had left. The week before my wedding felt like a dream, stitched together from late-night planning, quiet laughter, and the kind of nervous excitement that makes your hands tremble. My fiancé and I were exhausted but happy, crossing off checklists while imagining the moment we'd finally stand side by side as husband and wife. I sent the invitations out early, and despite everything, I had written my parents' names with a small, childlike hope tucked between the lines. I wanted them there. Even after years of feeling like an afterthought, I held on to the idea that maybe, just maybe, they would show up when it really mattered. My sister's reaction remained a strange shadow over the preparations. She didn't congratulate me the way one might expect. Instead, she made offhand remarks, some subtle, some dripping with bitterness, about how young marriages rarely work out, or how I was moving too fast just to keep up with society. She said these things as if she were dispensing wisdom, but her eyes said something else. Envy, maybe. Or fear of losing her status as the family's main character. The night before the ceremony, I tried to convince myself her opinion didn't matter. I was marrying a man who loved me for who I was, not for who he wished I could be. That should have been enough. But old habits die slowly, and even with all my progress, I still longed to hear my own mother say she'd be there smiling from her seat, proud of me. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. Clear skies, soft golden sunlight, the kind of morning that makes you believe the world itself is rooting for you. I stood in the bridal room while my maid of honor pinned the last delicate strand of my hair into place. She kept reminding me to breathe, as if she sensed the storm beneath my calm exterior. "They'll come," I said aloud, uncertain if I was reassuring myself or asking her to reassure me. She hesitated before answering. "They should." The ceremony was set to start at 3. By 2:30, guests had begun filling the seats, murmuring excitedly and complimenting the decor. My fiancé's parents hugged me tightly when they arrived, their warmth a balm over the sting of my own parents' silence. I checked my phone between every group of guests that walked through the doors. Nothing. No message, no missed call. No, we're running late. Nothing. By 2:45, that hopeful knot in my chest began to unravel. I told the coordinators to wait a few minutes, pretending it was about giving last-minute guests time to settle. But the truth was simpler and infinitely sadder. I was waiting for my own parents to show up. At 3 o'clock, I peeked out from behind the curtain. The empty chairs reserved for them felt like gaping wounds. Someone asked if we should begin. I pretended I didn't hear. At 3:10, I checked again. Still empty. At 3:15, my stomach twisted. My maid of honor squeezed my hand. "Carrie, maybe they're stuck in traffic." Traffic couldn't justify complete silence. My fiancé stepped into the room, quietly worry etched across his face. "Love, we can wait as long as you want, but I don't want you torturing yourself over people who can't prioritize you." That should have been my cue to let go. Instead, I clung to one final bit of hope. At 3:30, a notification finally buzzed on my phone. I exhaled, believing it was them. It wasn't. It was a social media post from my sister. A smiling photo of her, my mother, and my father sitting around her dining table, plates full of food, wine glasses, raised sunlight pouring in from her kitchen window. The caption read, "Family lunch. Nothing more important than spending time with the people who matter most." My breath caught in my throat. The world tilted. I stared at the screen, hoping I was reading it wrong, that maybe the timestamp was from earlier in the day. But no, it had been posted 12 minutes earlier. 12 minutes. 12 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. The laughter frozen in the photo, their relaxed poses, the easy joy on their faces. It felt like a deliberate, calculated twist of the knife. They didn't even try to hide it. They didn't even try to make an excuse. They just didn't come. I felt something inside me collapse. A quiet ache I'd carried my whole life suddenly sharpened into something clear, cold, and final. My fiancé saw my expression and gently took the phone from my trembling hands. When he read the post, anger flickered in his eyes, protective, fierce, but he didn't say a word. He just wrapped his arms around me, letting my tears fall silently against his shoulder. "I'm sorry," I whispered, even though I didn't know why I was apologizing. Maybe for hoping too much. Maybe for believing people who had never shown me a fraction of the loyalty I gave them. He tilted my chin up. "You have nothing to apologize for. They're the ones who made this choice, not you." We started the ceremony at 3:40. I walked down the aisle with a hollow space where my family should have been sitting. Guests smiled warmly, some even wiping tears from their own eyes. They thought my emotion came from the beauty of the moment, not the heartbreak preceding it. But I held my head high. I loved the man waiting for me at the end of that aisle, and I refused to let their absence ruin the beginning of our marriage. After the ceremony, after the photos, after the dancing, after everyone congratulated us and drifted home, I finally sat alone in a quiet corner of the venue, the weight of the day pressing down on me. Then I wrote the message that had been forming in my mind since the moment I saw that social media post. "I no longer consider you my parents." I didn't embellish. I didn't justify. I didn't leave room for misunderstanding. I pressed send, my hands strangely steady. Within minutes, messages poured in. Excuses, guilt trips, attempts to twist the narrative into something more palatable. My sister chimed in too, claiming her lunch was important and that I was overreacting. She accused me of trying to make her feel bad on her special day, as though my wedding were some inconvenience she had graciously ignored. I ignored all of them. On our honeymoon, the world seemed to expand again. Warm beaches, soft mornings, slow kisses. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, safe, seen. I didn't check my phone for days until my husband gently reminded me that I didn't owe anyone my time or attention. When we returned home, the flood of messages continued. My parents insisted they hadn't meant any harm, that my sister needed them more, that the lunch couldn't be rescheduled. Each excuse felt like a slap. Then came the shift. They weren't just sorry, they were angry. Angry that I'd stopped helping them financially. Angry that I wasn't bending anymore. Angry that they couldn't manipulate me the way they used to. And then everything accelerated quickly. One afternoon, my neighbors told me my mother had been waiting outside my apartment for hours. The thought of her pacing anxiously tugged at something in me, a tug made of guilt and habit and complicated love. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She didn't even sit down before the accusations began. "How dare you paint us as villains?" she demanded, her voice shaking with outrage instead of remorse. "Just because you're married now, you think you don't need your real family anymore." Her words hit with a force I wasn't prepared for. I tried to breathe through the sting, to explain how their actions on my wedding day had hurt me, but it was like speaking into a void. She was locked inside her version of the story, one where I was ungrateful, dramatic, unreasonable. She refused to hear the truth, refused to acknowledge the hurt she helped cause. When I told her she had chosen my sister over me, again and again, her face twisted in disbelief as if I were rewriting history. She called me crazy, loudly, with conviction. And something in me went still. I had reached my limit. "I think you should leave," I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. "And don't come back unless you're ready to take responsibility for how you've treated me." The door shut behind her with a soft click, but it echoed through me like thunder. The days after my mother stormed out of my apartment felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet, like the moment before a storm breaks open the sky. I tried focusing on work, on settling into newlywed life, on anything that felt normal. But every time my phone lit up, a cold ripple crawled down my spine because I already knew who it would be. My father called first. Then he texted. Then he emailed. Each message had the same undertone, a mixture of guilt, reproach, and subtle desperation. "Carrie, we're still your parents. You're throwing away everything we've built as a family. Can we please talk like adults?" I left each message unread. I wasn't ready. Not after the wedding debacle, not after my mother called me crazy in my own home. But ignoring them didn't slow anything down, it made everything worse. My sister reached out next. She didn't call. She didn't text. She went straight to social media. Some people forget loyalty when life starts going well for them, she wrote in a public post paired with a smug selfie. Families should support each other through everything, not turn their backs because of one misunderstanding. The comments exploded. Cousins, old classmates, nosy acquaintances, they all chimed in with vague sympathies, most of them clearly directed at me. A few family friends even messaged me privately, urging me to make peace before it's too late, as if I was the one who abandoned them on the most important day of my life. I stared at my phone, anger simmering beneath the hurt. How quickly she twisted the narrative, how easily people believed her. I told myself to stay calm, to let the noise fade, but then she messaged me directly. You know you owe me, right? That was how she started. Not hi, not can we talk, not anything resembling civility. Oh, you, I typed back before I could stop myself. For what? Her response came instantly. For my business. You should invest. You can clearly afford it. You got your whole life handed to you. I froze. My life handed to me. By who? Certainly not the parents who skipped my wedding to eat pasta at her apartment. What business? I asked, already regretting the conversation. She launched into a long explanation, some vague boutique idea she'd been dreaming about. No plan, no proof of concept, no savings. She ended with, since the parents used money from my college savings to help you, it's only fair you help me now. A lie, a complete fabrication. And she said it so casually, as if she believed saying something confidently made it true. No, I replied, and don't make up stories to guilt me. Her mask slipped instantly. You're unbelievable. If you don't give me the money, I'll take legal action. You do know I can claim part of your earnings, right? Since mom and dad invested more into you. For a second, I just stared at the screen, stunned by the absurdity of it. But then the absurdity faded, replaced by something darker: fear. Fear because this wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was escalation. I blocked her. The relief lasted all of 2 minutes. That's when my parents started again. Emails this time. Long ones. Dramatic ones. Some apologizing, others deflecting, still others demanding. The worst one came late at night. A multi-page message with the subject line, Our Financial Records. Inside was an itemized spreadsheet listing every expense they had ever spent on me as a child. Baby clothes, doctor visits, school supplies, lost teeth prizes, birthday cakes, gas money for rides they volunteered to give me, $2.49 for some candy they once bought me at age 9. Everything. And at the bottom, a total with a demand that I reimburse them because they were struggling and I owed them for raising me. My hands shook as I scrolled, not from anger, from something that felt like grief. Was this how they saw me? As a ledger? A failed investment. I shut my laptop and pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to hold back the sting. My husband found me like that and knelt beside me. Talk to me, he whispered. When I showed him the email, he exhaled slowly, squeezing my hand. This isn't love, Carrie. This is leverage. I know I whispered, though. Saying it aloud made it hurt more. I can't believe they'd calculate the cost of my childhood. He wrapped his arm around me and pulled me close. For a moment, I allowed myself to crumble into him, the weight of every betrayal pressing against my ribs. The next morning, extended family started messaging me. I heard your parents are in trouble. Are you helping them? Your sister said you've cut everyone off since your wedding. You've changed. Is everything okay? It felt like drowning. No matter how far I tried to swim, hands kept pulling me back into the undertow. My parents sent another email, this one, insisting they were considering selling the house unless someone in the family stepped up. They kept hinting it should be me. And then came the final blow. They suggested moving in with me. Not asked, suggested, like it was a foregone conclusion. It would help us reconnect. It would be practical. We wouldn't be a burden, we promise. The audacity left me speechless. Somewhere deep inside me, a voice whispered, if you open this door now, they will never let you close it again. That night I reached my breaking point. I drafted a reply. A calm, firm, meticulously worded message explaining that my finances were my own, that I wasn't a checking account, that I loved them once but couldn't continue enabling this behavior. I told them I needed distance, real distance, and boundaries that would not bend anymore. Before hitting send, I showed it to my husband. He nodded slowly. This is good. It's honest. I sent it. My sister's reaction came first. An explosive message accusing me of embarrassing the family, of being selfish, of thinking I was better than everyone else now. I deleted the notification without opening the full message. My parents took longer to respond. But when they did, their disappointment spilled across my screen like poison disguised as sorrow. "We can't believe you're doing this to us. You're abandoning your family. We raised you, Carrie. Doesn't that mean anything to you anymore? You're choosing a man over blood." Something inside me cracked, not broken, but split open with clarity. This wasn't love, this was control. Still, something even darker lingered, fear of what they would do next. A friend of mine who had seen this kind of behavior before in her own family urged me to speak with a lawyer. Just in case, she said, "Don't wait until they push you off the edge." I took her advice. The lawyer listened quietly as I explained everything, every message, every threat, every accusation. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk. "You're not overreacting," she said. "This is harassment, and it will likely escalate." Hearing a professional say it out loud made everything feel real in a way I wasn't prepared for. "If they continue contacting you," she continued, "document everything. Every call, every email, every attempt to reach you. If they show up at your home, notify the police immediately." A chill moved through me. Was this what my life had become? Running from people who were supposed to love me? I left the office with a thick folder containing legal guidelines, resources, and emergency protocols. Holding it felt like holding a shield. Heavy, necessary. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, the city lights flickering through the window, and whispered to myself, "It's not my fault. I'm not crazy. I'm not cruel." I said it again and again as if repetition could unravel decades of conditioning. My husband sat behind me, his arms slipping around my waist. "We'll get through this," he murmured into my shoulder. "You're not alone." But even in his embrace, I felt the storm outside gathering force. I knew my family wouldn't stop. Not yet. Not until someone forced them to. I used to believe that distance created safety, that blocking numbers, ignoring emails, and establishing boundaries would be enough to keep the past from clawing into my present. I was wrong. When people are used to controlling you, your silence doesn't deter them, it provokes them. The harassment began quietly at first. A withheld number call here, a vague email there. Nothing directly threatening, but everything unsettling. My stomach tightened every time my phone buzzed, and my husband started checking the peephole before we opened the door, even if we weren't expecting anyone. But then it escalated. One night, just after dinner, someone knocked. 3 sharp, shallow taps. My husband stiffened beside me and walked to the door. When he looked through the peephole, he froze. "It's your dad." Every nerve in my body clenched. My father, who had barely tried to see me in person before, was suddenly standing outside my home like an uninvited shadow. My husband opened the door only a few inches. My father's eyes were red, his expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "Carrie," he said, peering past my husband, "we need to talk, as a family." My husband didn't move. Now isn't the time. My dad tried pushing forward. If she won't answer my calls, she can at least listen to me in person. I stepped into the doorway, keeping the distance between us like a barrier. My father's voice softened, but not from remorse, more like calculation. "Your mother is sick with worry. Your sister is devastated, and we're drowning, Carrie. After everything we've done for you, you can't even help us now." Once those words would have pierced straight through me, but now they only settled coldly in my chest. "You didn't come to my wedding," I said quietly. "You made your choice." He sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. "We already explained that." I shook my head, explained. "You prioritized a lunch over my marriage, and when I set boundaries, you tried to leverage my childhood like a debt you were collecting." My father's jaw tightened. "We raised you. That wasn't free." The words were so sharp, so unapologetic that something inside me finally snapped, not in anger, but clarity. "I need you to leave," I said. He swallowed, anger rising beneath his skin. "If you won't help us voluntarily, then we'll figure something out." It was a threat, cloaked poorly, but a threat nonetheless. My husband pushed the door closed, his hand firm, his jaw clenched tight. When the latch clicked, it felt like the end of something that had been rotting for years. After that, the messages turned darker, more urgent, more demanding. My sister created a new account, just to send me a long paragraph accusing me of being selfish, cruel, and mentally unstable. She insisted again that she would pursue legal action if I didn't do my part. My mother sent a voice message late one night, sobbing so loudly I could barely make out the words. But in the middle of the crying, she muttered, "You're killing us, Carrie. You're breaking this family." My breath caught trembling. It was the exact kind of emotional chokehold they always use, turning my pain into their weapon. The next morning, I made another appointment with the lawyer. She listened silently as I replayed the messages, described the visit, showed the screenshots. When I finally ran out of words, she exhaled slowly. "This isn't just manipulation anymore," she said. "This is harassment, and it will continue unless you take legal steps." My throat tightened. "Steps like what?" "A restraining order," she said carefully. "One for all three of them, and documented charges for harassment and intrusion." The thought sent a rush of nausea through me. Filing charges against my own family felt like ripping out part of my identity. But what choice did I have? They weren't stopping. They weren't hearing me. They weren't even trying. They were escalating. "Your safety matters," the lawyer added softly. "Your peace matters." My husband squeezed my hand. "We're doing this," he said firmly. "We're not living like this." And so we did. Filing the charges was one of the most emotionally excruciating things I've ever done. I felt my hands shake signing the paperwork. My signature looked small, almost childlike on the forms. I stood there thinking, this is the point of no return. This is the moment my family officially becomes something else, something dangerous. Part of me waited for guilt to swallow me whole. It didn't. Instead, there was only a strange numbness, and beneath it, something that felt like quiet relief. After filing, my lawyer instructed me to change all my contact information. Everything. Phone number, email, even emergency contacts at work. That night, I sat beside my husband, deleting accounts, closing old email addresses, and clearing out entire parts of my digital life. It felt like wiping away fingerprints, proof of who I was before the breaking point. But the biggest step was still ahead. Moving. We packed in silence for days, filling boxes with the life we had built too close to the shadow of my family. Every time we carried a box to the car, I felt a mixture of grief and liberation. Leaving meant safety. It also meant admitting something I had spent years avoiding, that the people who raised me were not capable of loving me the way I deserved. The new apartment was smaller but quieter, the kind of quiet that didn't feel dangerous, just peaceful. The first night we slept there, I woke up expecting a knock at the door, a buzzing phone, a guilt-laden message, but the silence held. For the first time in months, I breathed deeply without feeling like the air was too thin. Over the next few weeks, the legal process began moving forward. I provided documentation, forwarded messages, prepared statements. My lawyer reassured me it was the right step. My husband reminded me daily that I wasn't alone. Even friends reached out, offering support and comfort. Yet grief still found me, sometimes small, sharp moments during mundane tasks like washing dishes or folding laundry. The memory of what could have been, the ghost of the family I once hoped existed, the ache of lost possibility. But grief is not the same as regret. One morning I made coffee and stood by the new window, watching sunlight spill across the kitchen floor. My husband walked up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and kissed my temple. "You seem lighter," he murmured. "I am," I said, surprised by how true it felt. "I'm finally starting to feel like myself." He held me tighter. "You deserve this peace." And for the first time, I believed him. I didn't choose this path out of cruelty or vengeance. I chose it because it was the only way to save myself, to protect my marriage, to reclaim my life. It took losing my family to realize I had never truly had them in the first place. But I have myself now, whole, steady, unbroken. And I have a partner who stands with me, not above me, a future that feels like a clean page instead of a repeating chapter. Sometimes choosing yourself means letting go of everyone else. Sometimes survival looks like starting over. And sometimes peace requires walking away from the noise and never turning back.